The Maya built some of the most advanced cities in the ancient world, towering pyramids, sprawling plazas, systems of trade and astronomy that rivaled anything in Europe at the time. And then almost suddenly they walked away. Not all at once, not in a single catastrophic event, but over the course of about a century, the great cities of the southern Maya lowlands were abandoned. The temples went silent. The plazas emptied. The jungle moved back in. This was not a civilization that got conquered. This was a civilization that collapsed from within at the height of its power. And the question that has haunted archaeologists for decades is simple. Why? The collapse happened during the 9th century, roughly between 800 and 900 AD. At that time, cities like Tikal, Copán, and Palenque were thriving centers of art, politics, and religion. Populations were dense. Construction projects were massive. The Maya were not a single empire but a network of city-states, each ruled by a king who claimed divine authority. And those kings were constantly competing, constantly building bigger temples, waging war, capturing rivals, and demanding more from their people. But underneath all that glory, cracks were forming. The Maya had been clearing jungle for farmland for centuries. They grew maize, beans, and squash on lands that were not naturally fertile. The soil was thin. The limestone bedrock beneath did not hold water well, so the Maya relied heavily on seasonal rains and reservoirs they built to capture runoff. When the rains came, the system worked. When the rains failed, everything started to fall apart. And the rains did fail. Sediment cores taken from lake beds across the Maya region show a pattern of severe droughts during the 9th century. These were not short, dry spells. These were multi-decade droughts, some of the worst in thousands of years. Rivers slowed, reservoirs dried up, crops failed year after year. The jungle that once provided game and wild food became harder to survive in. People went hungry. At the same time, the population of the southern lowlands had reached a peak. Some estimates put the population in the millions, packed into cities and surrounding farmlands. That many people needed food, and the land was already being pushed to its limit. Deforestation had removed the trees that stabilized soil and retained moisture. Erosion increased. Soil quality dropped. Farmers were working harder for smaller yields, and the system had no buffer left when the droughts hit. The kings kept building. Even as resources became scarce, rulers continued to pour labor and wealth into monuments and temples. They waged wars to capture prisoners for ritual sacrifice, to prove their power to the gods and to their rivals. Warfare became more frequent and more brutal. Inscriptions from this period show increasing numbers of battles, destroyed cities, and captured nobles. The competition between kings drained manpower and resources exactly when the population needed stability. And here is the thing. The Maya did not have centralized political control. Each city was independent. There was no empire to coordinate relief, no system to redistribute food from one region to another. When one city collapsed, it could not rely on help from neighbors. In fact, neighbors might see it as an opportunity to raid or conquer. So the collapse spread like a wave. One city would lose its ability to feed its people. The population would scatter, the king would lose authority, and the next city would face the same spiral. By the end of the 9th century, the great southern cities were mostly empty. The people did not vanish. They migrated north to the Yucatan, where water was more accessible through cenotes, natural sinkholes that reach underground rivers. They moved to highlands where rainfall was more reliable. They returned to smaller villages and farming communities. The Maya civilization continued, but the era of the great southern city-states was over. What makes this collapse so striking is that it was not caused by a single enemy or a sudden disaster. It was a perfect storm of environmental stress, political fragmentation, overpopulation, and climate change. The Maya had built a civilization that depended on a delicate balance, and when the rain stopped, that balance shattered. The cities are still there, buried under jungle, slowly being uncovered by archaeologists. The pyramids remain. The carvings still tell stories of kings and gods, But the people who built them knew when the system could no longer sustain them, and they made a choice. They left.